everyone, I'm Miss Sarah from Oxford Library, and today I'm going to show you how to make your very own soap carving. So here's my little sheep that I made from a bar of soap, just like you will today. If you registered for our soap carving program, then you already have a kit with materials that you're going to use in order to make this your very own sculpture. If you don't have a kit, then that's okay. I'll show you what you're going to need so that way you can follow along using your own materials to do the same. It's pretty cute, right? Just a reminder, this does get pretty messy, so make sure you're in a spot where you can easily clean up any soap shavings from your carving. This might look hard, but it's really super easy, and I'm going to show you how to do it right now. Before we begin, you're going to want to make sure that you have all the materials ready and on hand. In your kit, you already have a bar of soap, a plastic butter knife, a paper rectangle, and a large paper clip. What you need to provide is a pair of scissors and a pencil. Optionally, you could also have a clean paintbrush on hand, but that is not necessary in order to complete this craft. So now that we have everything that we're going to need, let's get started. Our very first step is we are going to use our paper rectangle in order to draw what we want to eventually carve in our soap. So the rectangle is already the same size as the soap. You'll see here. So we just have to make sure that anything we draw is within the confines of this paper rectangle. So I'm going to go ahead and I think I'm going to make my bar of soap into a sheep. So I'm just going to quickly draw a sheep on my paper right here. So here is my picture of my sheep. As you can see, I took this time where it's just on the paper to really define what I wanted. I erased and scribbled out stuff a lot to make sure it's going to be exactly what I want before I start carving. Now that my picture is ready, our next step is we are going to cut it out using a pair of scissors. Just cut it out all along the outline of where you drew your picture. Now that my sheep is all cut out, I am going to unwrap my bar of soap and we'll get ready to start carving. So now that my soap is unwrapped, I'm going to lay my picture that I drew on top of it. And I see that it fits perfectly within the confines of that bar of soap. So now I'm going to take my pencil and I am going to trace around my picture. And this will begin how we carve it. So the soap is so soft that just the tip of my pencil, even if I do it lightly, it's going to start carving into it. So that's how we find the outline to start cutting into it more and carving more of our picture. So you only have to do this lightly, but take your time so that way you know that you're doing it exactly how you drew your picture. And go all the way around, just like that. So I'm done tracing. I'm going to take my picture off. I'm going to set it to the side here because even though I'm done with that part, it still gives me an idea about how I wanted the face to look and the details on the inside that weren't part of the outline we already did. This is the part where optionally you can have a paintbrush to swipe away the shavings that you just made, but really you can also use your hand if you want to do that. Again, paintbrush is only optional. You don't need it for this craft. But now we can see I have an outline of my sheep. It's I only did it lightly and you can still see it pretty well. So now the next step is we're going to take our plastic butter knife and our large paper clip and we're going to start carving. So the butter knife is good for big chunks of our soap that we know we're not going to use. So this corner here where I know I really don't need it, I'm actually just going to start cutting into it right there. And again, super easy. You don't need a whole lot of pressure in order to do this craft. Any soap that I don't use, I'm just going to set aside over here. But otherwise, I'm going to keep carving around and really getting close to this outline that I've already drawn. So I've used all this with just my butter knife, so now I want to show you how you can use it with your large paper clip. This is great to do really detailed work. So if you see here, where my line is, I'm just going to drag the paper clip around it. And you'll see how it starts to just kind of shave off some of that soap. Okay, so right now I'm going to focus on just one side of my soap. I can try and do the other side of it later after I have more of a shape of how my sheep is going to look. But you can see how you can get pretty detailed with it and really have some control about where the shaving is happening. Remember to periodically keep swiping away at the shaving so that way you can have a clear picture of how you're doing. And this helps especially with my little sheep here who has a lot of puffballs. So I want to make sure I'm doing a good job of going around them and really getting his face and his nose. And you can switch back and forth between the butter knife and your paper clip. Just knowing that there's gonna be a better tool for each section probably in how you're doing this. Okay? So hopefully you can see this pretty well. And I'm just gonna keep going. Not worrying about any of the detail, like on my picture, how I can see where the line is around the puffball on his head. I'm not going to worry about that quite yet. My main focus right now is just to get this whole big outline of my sheep. So I'm going to keep working on that, and I'm going to show you a little bit ahead of time how it's turning out. So here's another point where you can decide how much you want to actually carve into your soap. I've done a pretty good job of making my outline of my sheep like I drew on my paper, right? So I've carved it down enough that you can definitely see the outline and the definition of the sheep, but I still have some soap behind it. And if you want to stop here, if that's a good spot for you, then that's totally okay. But if you also want to keep going, like I will, I'm going to keep shaving down until this sheep looks the same on both sides to kind of have a 3D effect of a sculpture for my sheep. So I'm going to keep going, but if you are ready to stop right here, if this is good enough for you, then you can skip a little bit in the video to see what would be our next step after we're all done with our big carving. So I shaved off a little bit more around the sides here. But my next step to make it a little bit more 3D is I'm actually going to take my paper again, flip it so that way the head's always on the same side. And I'm going to trace around my paper again, and that's going to help me give a little bit more definition here. And then that way I can kind of connect them at the end here to make both sides look the same of a sheep. Okay, so let me go ahead and do this. And it's not going to be perfect because as we're shaving, we probably got some parts that we shaved off more than we originally maybe thought. But that's okay because in the end, this is just kind of to help us give an idea of where we're going and not necessarily a strict, this is what it has to be. So I'm done carving my sheep as much as I can. I did both sides, tried my best. And so now, if you're all done the majority of your carving, what you're going to do is we're going to start to add these little details that we drew on our picture that we didn't have to carve into the outline of our sculpture. So now we're going to take a pencil, and the place where I have like the eyes and the ears and a little bit more definition of where the fluff is compared to like his legs or his head, that's what I'm going to use my pencil for. So again, just doing it really lightly. Just going in and really shaping out what I need to. Small ear. Always brushing away what I need. Here's the eye. Maybe I'm going to add a little smile. I'm going to do definition of fluff right here. So you can see that these are his legs. Just like that. And so for me, since I did on both sides, I'm going to turn it around and do it on this side too. And there we go. And so now that I've done this, the last thing you want to do is maybe you want to rub it just to kind of make it a little bit more smooth. Okay, you can go back and see if there's any little details that you might need to fix. Use your large paper clip. But otherwise, once you do the little details and you think it's all good, then you're done. Now you have a little soap carving, a little sculpture to hang out wherever you'd like it. Great job. So this is also optional. You don't have to do this. But because there's this word ivory in the middle here for the soap, I'm just going to kind of use my paper clip and go lightly across it. So that way I'm kind of rubbing it out. So you can't see that word anymore, just because it might be a little bit distracting for me for my carving. And you don't really have to dig in deep. I'm just barely touching it, just going back and forth. This also gives it a little bit of texture that we can always smooth out with our finger if we want to. But now I have that word that's gone, so that way it won't distract from my from my carving on both sides.